Conor. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. You were like my North Star, and I didn't think you're going to respond. So thanks for thanks for coming on for
Yeah,
real.
we were just chatting before we started recording that this is my first podcast in honestly a long time. I think probably over a year, just because I have been very much focused on other avenues of content creation. And it's gotten to the point now where I think it's time to start to put myself out there as a person a little bit more rather than just like a face behind a screen that just like spews, anatomical terms and biomechanics all day long. I think this is the right time. It feels right for me to put myself out there a little bit more now.
Yes, the stars aligned. You picked the right podcast, if I do say so
Yeah.
myself.
There we go.
I want to get into your personal physical therapy journey because
Hmm.
I know that you had a back injury. You're doing a deadlift. You felt some pain and did the traditional PT stuff. It didn't work. Fast forward, however much time, you did some PRI specific things, had an internship, I think in North Carolina. And that is where the world kind of opened up for you in terms of there's a lot of different ways to approach asymmetries, movement inefficiencies. So, I guess walk us through what physical therapy looked like for you before, and then how you were able to alter your plan of care and your exercise prescription to make a long lasting change for your back pain. Kind of a loaded question, but we're going to do it.
No, that's okay. Yeah, it's all good stuff. I think the biggest thing to like set like the right context, like first of all, like it's thank you for knowing all that. Like that's cool. Like you clearly have an understanding of like where I'm coming from, which is cool. But I had a mentor at the time who was very much into your like traditional classic, like if it's weak, make it stronger. If it's a back injury, strengthen your back type of mentality and perspective. And so he gave me like kettlebell swings, McKenzie extensions, back bracing activities, core bracing activities, all the traditional stuff you would think. But it just never really made any lasting impact. I think the only reason why I felt better temporarily is just like you're getting blood flow to the area. But I didn't feel like I was actually like fixing anything underneath the surface. It all felt very symptom driven. And so I rehabbed for a few weeks, blew out my back again, repeated the process because I didn't know who else to go to. Like this guy was known as like the man, at least the college I went to, and as it relates to rehab. I just kept going through this over and over again. And fast forward like probably 6 to 8 months down the road, I'm like doing this internship, and I just got super lucky that I fell into the one place in the whole state of Oregon that was like really doing this on a level outside of physical therapy and rehab. And that was really nice because I was like, this is different. But also, ironically, that guy, the internship coordinator, was also a former mentee of this guy who was doing my rehab and my current mentor. And he was like, I have a lot of respect for this guy, but I just got to let you know that I disagree with almost everything he has to say about the human body and especially back injuries. And I was like, wow, okay. So like, let's see what happens. And he fixed my back pain in like 2 days. And I have not really looked back ever since. Like, to be honest, like if I get any sort of inflammation, I'll feel it in that area, but I know immediately how to fix it because I have the right tools that address what was going on. And I can basically live my life without any risk or fear of re-injury, which is nice.
Yeah. It's interesting the total script being flipped because I mean, you like you were saying, it's a symptom driven way to treat, or it's a addressing asymmetries kind of PRI way to treat. For people that don't know what PRI is, can you give like a baseline explanation of what their approach is and then also what you did for your back?
So that's the foundation of what I learned. Postural Restoration Institute is an organization that's been around for a few decades now. And they were the first to really put like traditional asymmetrical patterns that have been studied. Like this is not like, it's not like new information. Like these things have been studied for decades and decades. But PRI is the first to like really popularize like common normal asymmetrical patterns within humans. And so from there, people started trying their exercises, taking their courses, and it spread like wildfire. Like, especially during, I'd say like the late 2010s, it really started to take off. That's what I started to learn about it as well. And so from there, like once you do something that really feels right for your body, it's kind of hard to look back, like I said. So I think it gained a lot of popularity. And for good reason, because it was helping a lot of people. It was really addressing the underlying biomechanical things that were going on within people's posture and their associated movement patterns and limitations. At this point now, though, in my career, as one like progresses and evolves and continues to challenge their own beliefs, like I find myself moving beyond their model a little bit more now. And that's no disrespect to them. Like I owe so much of my upbringing, my career, my foundation to them. But I do think that every model has its own limitations. And so I've kind of found a way to combine several things together to find a model that works for me and the population that I work with. And what I believe is like also broadly, generally applicable to a lot of situations. Yes, everyone has their own way of doing things. But for me, I did like, there's the classic PRI exercises that everyone does when they first take a course or they learn them. And those ones clicked specifically for my body and my situation because I happened to fall into a very similar representation of the classic traditional PRI pattern, which is someone who is, to put it very simply, too shifted over to their right side, can't shift into their left side. And that was me. And I had a left lumbar herniation. And I basically fixed it with those classic exercises. But that's because I fit that pattern. Things can get complicated if you don't. But I was very fortunate and lucky in that regard for that to spark a certain degree of passion and inspiration to keep pursuing this knowledge.
I'm glad you brought up the kind of how you piece things together now, and you've sort of graduated from that initial baseline level of knowledge and you put your own spin on things because you have like an interesting approach. I'm curious if you take it from the continuing education. Are you doing research? Are you taking like clinical case studies that you see or people in the gym that you see? Because now it's almost like you have your own Conor Harris approach. I mean, you have your
Mhm.
own biomechanics courses. So yeah, what goes into the decision making and then the planning for a client that comes in to see you?
Well, what I've noticed is that there's a lot of really smart people out there that have kind of taken similar approaches to biomechanics, et cetera, and they teach or they develop their own models, but they have a very hard time bringing it down a level to like the average person's understanding. What I'm blessed with is the ability to not be super smart like these people. I'm kind of a dummy, so I can hear what they're saying and then think about how it relates on a more simple level to what I would want to do. And then take that information and use it in my own way that would work for my content and my population after I play with it for a little bit. When it comes to like these very, very smart people operating at the highest level, I consistently see a theme where it's like they just can't get out of their own way intellectually to like bring it down to the level of the average person's understanding because they literally can't do that in their own brain. The way they think is just so much different than everyone else. And so they literally don't understand what it means to communicate in a way that the average person would understand. They're just like too caught up in their own things that are making them successful. So for me, I'm like, hey, okay, I see what you're trying to do here. This is what this means on a more simple level. And I think people really appreciated that early on because PRI was notorious for being overly complicated and way too dogmatic. And so I was like, hey, guys, have you ever thought about just interpreting it this way? And then that was what got me off to originally my initial following. But then from there, I started, doing other internships, experimenting with things myself, questioning my own beliefs. And so I started to get influences from other areas, such as Bill Hartman. I took some courses from Gary Ward all over the place. And there's an endless amount of things, but I've basically diluted all this information into a way that works for a model that I have a lot of different inspirations from. And so the question is just like, how do you take something that is so complicated, like the human body and pain, and be able to create a model and a progression of steps to where you take someone from the initial assessment and be able to then go, okay, if this, then that. It's very hard for people to do that. It's very hard for people to go like, okay, I have this assessment. Where do I need to take this person? Then from there to here to here, like a lot of people have all these like models and just like frameworks in their head that are just exactly that. They're in their head. They're not actually written down in a way that's like a step by step process. And for me, that's very frustrating. I'm sure for other people, it's very frustrating. It's hard to learn from people that are like, you take a weekend seminar course or you take, I don't know, like an internship from someone. And it's just like you get pieces, you get like little tidbits of information and then you get like larger tidbits of information. But then it's so hard to connect everything together. And so I got to the point where I was like, okay, you know what? Like, I'm going to be the first person to take an initial assessment and I'm going to go, if this, then that, and make it very straightforward and make it very clear. Like, you do these exercises at this point, and that way all the guesswork is kind of taken out and there's like objective retesting. I'm not just going to say, like, do these exercises and then hope for the best, see you in 2 weeks. It's do these exercises, retest to make sure you got a genuine change that you know is real, and then retest after they've held on to their adaptations and actually prove to you that they can keep it. And so it's a very long-winded answer of me saying that I got frustrated with all of these different methodologies and all these different like schools of thought not actually having like a solid framework to like actually work out of. It was always too theoretical. It was always too abstract. And so that's what I'm trying to do, is like bring it down to a level for the average person, trainer, physical therapist, to be able to go, okay, what do I actually do?
Right. No, I think it's a common theme with guests that I have on that have started their own thing, whether that be a clinic, whether that be virtual rehab programming, biomechanics courses. A lot of times it stems from there not being anything out there that's good enough and up to their standards. So they're like, well, I guess I have to make this myself. And I mean, I think that's where a lot of good things are born. So I appreciate it. I appreciate what you do. I think I haven't taken one of your courses yet, but I've watched some of your live feeds, some of the videos, some of the case studies that you've done, and it is a very like step by step follow through. If this, then that. Who's your ideal person that's learning from you? Are you trying to target physical therapists? Are you looking for personal trainers? Is it both?
It's really both. Yeah. Like, I don't really discern just anyone that works with humans. That's the type of person I want to work with, because this stuff can be applied in so many different realms. It can be applied only to personal training. It can be applied to strength and conditioning coaches. It can be applied to athletic trainers, physical therapists. I think the ideal person is someone that is probably a personal trainer that is also working with people that consistently have movement limitations. Or B would be a physical therapist that has like a general skill set, but they're looking to expand upon that and have a model that is exactly what we're talking about. That's like, if this, then that, rather than just like kind of giving people exercises and then hoping it works out and like see you in a week, and like not really having that clear model of progression. That's really what I'm trying to help people with.
What was the turning point for you when you realized it's time for me to make my own course and start educating people on my own? Because before it was content creation, and I think that's where a lot of people were discovering you. Was there a significant moment where you realized like this could be its own business in itself?
It was very obvious to me, because when I first started posting, people wanted to like learn what I was already in the process of practicing and also continuing to learn myself. Like, I was still like a newbie, I was still trying to figure it out. And so I eventually just had people join me on a Zoom call, because this is like very much at the beginning of COVID, like day one. And so I would do Zoom calls with people, and then someone else wanted to learn from me. So I eventually started making slides, and then those slides turned into longer slides, which turned into presentations. And it got to the point where I literally was doing 25 different calls a week with individual one-on-one presentations for an hour. So I taught the material 25 times a week. And I just got to the point where I was like, this has to become a group thing, or I'm going to like literally lose my mind.
You also probably got really good at presenting.
That's exactly what it helped me with. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, like, I know the information genuinely, like, in and out. And teaching that was very helpful for me to be able to develop a model and make it make sense.
Cool. And you have some changes happening to the structure of the classes and the coursework,
Mhm.
correct?
I
Is that
do.
anything that can you talk about that?
Yeah, I can touch on it. So I'm moving from a online course model to a mentorship model. So your physical therapist might be interested in this, because it is going to be much more hands-on. The limitations of an online course is, how do you actually implement it? We do have practical application sessions for the course, but now I'm shifting to a year-long, 12-month mentorship process. So essentially you can join it at any time, and then you're in for 12 months. and you can either catch up with where the course is currently, because like the main block of content is 12 weeks and it's going to cycle 4 different times for you. And anytime I update it or whatever, like obviously you're going to get that included with it, but there's also going to be like introductory content, advanced level content beyond the 12 weeks, supplementary courses like for the foot, for the ankle, manual therapy techniques, etc. And so all this is built together into this like big mentorship. And then throughout that, you get access to be able to obviously like post your case studies, ask questions in our Slack chat. But the big, big thing is that you get to fly out to San Diego at my gym and my facility, and you can attend these weekend seminars, which I'll be hosting several times a year. And so that's how you like truly get the value. And if you can't attend them because for whatever reason you're busy or you can't make it out, you live in a different country or whatever, well, that's fine because we're going to record them and we're going to share them with you. And nothing replaces the in-person touch experience, but it is still nice to see like the practical stuff done like right then and there. So that'll be cool. And that's going to probably go into effect. What is it, March 17th? So probably like early April. It's coming for sure. And I'm really excited about it. And it's going to be like a totally different experience. But I think this is truly how you learn, is like having like a period of time that's extensive, but also intensive. And that way, like you truly at the end of those cycles of content, know the information enough to feel confident with it. Because what I've found is that people like take the course for 12 weeks. They love it. A lot of people say it's one of the best courses they've ever taken, but they're like, how do I actually like really go about applying all this information in a way that like works for me? And that's what I'm trying to do, is like take this model that's already existing and like works for a lot of people, but make it more practically applicable with the assessments, the exercises, all that good stuff. And I'm continually consciously trying to learn and grow. And I'm forever trying to take that like student mentality. So throughout the 12 weeks and the 12 months, like there will be things that I add in. There will be things that I try to change to make the course better. And I think an added benefit of that is like seeing my model grow as the participant grows within it itself.
Right. Each iteration will be better than the last, and people can
Exactly.
expect that they will continuously learn. Being a continuous learner is like a common theme on the podcast, I'd say.
Mhm.
When you look back on your strength and conditioning days and when you were like really just wanting to work with pro athletes, you've made a complete, like I would say 180 from
Yeah.
where you'd want to work with athletes to being just really an educator, a pillar in the community, if you will. And I genuinely think it's fun to see a shift like that. And when people really come into their strengths or lean into their strengths. Did you ever foresee yourself being more of an educator?
No, I did totally sincerely. No, I didn't at all. I wanted to work with NBA players primarily.
Cool.
That was my passion. I still love basketball. It's like my favorite sport, but I never saw myself as an educator. No, I would like go to continuing education seminars. I'd watch online courses and I was like, I could never, ever do that. I hated talking in front of people, but
Really?
yeah, for sure. No, I didn't like it at all. And I think just by the repetition of doing it 25 times one on one, like I could just like I could literally like talk about it and be thinking about something else at this point. It's just ingrained into my like neurons. They're just like completely like full of this information. But anyway, so what I realized through the content creation process and through just posting is that people would tell me that I'm good at it and that I can like bring the information to a level of understanding. But for me, it's like, and I don't mean this like with ego. I'm just trying to say this like, for me, I just don't understand how it's that hard, I guess, is like just take a concept and explain it to people and just like show how it's done. Like to me, it's truly not that challenging to make like quality content. But then there's like the editing and the filming and all that stuff. And like people don't want to put their face out there. So like you have to have an element of willingness to do
Right.
that. But if you watch what I'm saying in front of the camera, it's really not that crazy. So really what I'm doing is I'm just going up there and just like explaining how things are and just like, have you ever thought about it this way? And people really seem to like that, I guess. So
Well, I mean, your recipe is there, obviously. Like you take something and you say, "This is what people normally do for X,
yeah.
but this is why maybe it doesn't work so well. And here's a nice visual of the anatomy, and then here's why it's going to work better." So it's a nice flow that I think people don't see often. Like a lot of the things that you see on the internet are very clickbaity and very like savable and flashy, and then that's it. So
Mhm.
I think it's a compliment, to your expertise, but also the recipe that you have in the content is it's savory. We like it.
Thank you. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that it attracts the right type of energy too. I'm very fortunate to say that of the thousands of people that have taken my course live, I've never had a person join that was like sincerely a pain in the ass or like someone that I wouldn't want that type of energy in my course with. It's really beautiful how the energy you put out into the world is what you attract back to you. And that's what I try to do. Like, I don't want people that are going to be like there's certain subsections of the fitness industry that attract like very toxic negative energy, and I don't want that, and I never have to interact with those people. It's really honestly incredible. Like I'm very shocked I haven't had at least one person that was just like a nightmare to work with in my course, but it's never happened.
Well, Connor, I've never taken one of your courses, so hold your
It could be
breath.
you.
No, jokes. Okay, switching gears a little bit. I want to talk some about asymmetries because that is
Please.
a lot of what your content is focused around. And in physical therapy school, it is very brushed over. It's like,
Mhm.
yeah, people will be asymmetrical. I mean, depending on their dominant hand, like if I write with my left hand, this shoulder might be lower, this one will be higher, and maybe that's why. And that was kind of the extent of the covering of that knowledge,
Mhm.
which is unfortunate, but you delve a lot into even just the anatomical asymmetry, like heart being on the left side, diaphragm being bigger and having more attachments on the right, and like just us weighing more on the right side versus the left. So I want to talk about why, for people that don't know, being a little bit more right favoring is the most common. And then I guess how that could play into how you would treat somebody,
Mm.
whether that's a personal training client or a PT patient.
For sure. Okay, so I mean, like even as our organs develop in our like as we're embryo, like literally like our small intestine like spins in a certain asymmetrical direction as it grows. Cilia, which are these like hair-like follicle structures in our cells, and those have a leftward turn, a leftward bias. And when we inhale, our diaphragm falls down and to the, or sorry, our liver falls down and to the left because it sits and resides in the right side of our thorax. So we have all of these things, and like this is like again, like I am scratching the surface here. We have all of these different influences that are basically putting us in a river with a current that is turning us to the left all the time. And so if you are in a current and it's pulling you to the left and you want to stop that current, what are you going to do? You're going to push your left side forward to prevent yourself from falling into that bias. So that's essentially what the body is doing is it's turning right. And also like gravitationally, we literally just weigh more on the right side of our body. So we have all these things that just like pull us into this direction. And it is so profoundly impactful in that asymmetrical presentation because even when you think someone is shifted into their left side, they're usually just so far right in some areas of their body that it looks like they're turning left. It's just that that segment is left relative to all these other segments. And I hate to like bring it down to like this level, like, oh, everyone's turned right. But like, honestly, like most people are. It
Yeah.
really is crazy. And I even went through a period in the last like 12 months where I refused to believe that. And I was like, there's no way you don't have people that are like not left or there's no way you don't have people that aren't like shifted into their left side, like significantly. And obviously there's exceptions to the rule, but in terms of like the overall bias of where our body goes, like we're trying to fight this current all the time. It's literally like our internal fluid dynamics down to like the
Yeah.
cellular level to a certain extent that are just like constantly in this flow and current. So once you really appreciate that, you understand how like, wow, there are so many people that have like a lower right shoulder than left. There are so many people that like turn their right foot out when they walk. And I say all this just to explain the influence of the asymmetrical presentation on the human, but like we also have to appreciate that this is natural. It is very normal. So there's a big pushback about a couple of years ago, once like the PRI methodology was starting to gain a lot of popularity of people saying, actually, this is crap because it's very normal to be asymmetrical. And so to create fear around the idea of being asymmetrical is a really bad idea, which I inherently agree with the premise of that. But you then have the people saying, okay, well, posture isn't associated with pain. The research is very conclusive about that. And I also agree with the premise of that. But I think that these are very superficial, surface level counter arguments for a couple of reasons. Like, first, if you were to take a bunch of people and ask them in a vacuum, do you have pain? Yes or no? And then look at their posture and try to draw a correlation to that. Like, of course, you're going to see people that have like very widely ranging answers based off of that. You're going to see some people with terrible posture and no pain at all. You're going to see some people with fantastic posture and they're in crippling chronic pain. So, how is that? Well, if you're only looking at one variable, then you don't know. But if you consider other variables, then I think it becomes increasingly clear. But it's very hard to like run a study that would be able to account for that. So what I mean is like, what if you had someone that has terrible posture, but all they do is sit at a desk all day long? And there is almost zero external demand for them trying to manage forces outside of them sitting at a desk. That person is probably a whole lot less likely to have pain than someone who has the same exact postural presentation, but wants to go in the gym and squat 400 pounds. Or the same exact person that goes out and plays tennis with his friends 3 or 4 times a week. So we have to consider load. We have to consider the available mobility you have to express what is needed for whatever task is at hand. And posture as a representation of a strategy for your ability to manage gravity. It's not the end all be all, but it's a helpful thing to understand the strategy that your body uses. And asymmetry plays directly into that. So if you are asymmetrical to a certain extent, then that is representing how your body likes to manage gravity when you have two legs on the ground and you're standing upright. And that does typically have correlations to how your body moves throughout the gait cycle, throughout specific movements that are athletic in nature, like cutting or jumping. Like we can get all into that, but essentially like posture is helpful. It's definitely not the only thing that matters or even like the main thing that matters because it all comes down to movement, in my opinion. But I think it is helpful to appreciate how asymmetries can give us insight into that and what your movement strategies may actually be or not be.
Yeah, and I think that's helpful for especially the new clinician or anybody running through a new patient evaluation because you can find asymmetries all over the place. And it could be easy to get lost in the weeds and not know what's applicable, what's not. Does this have any correlation to the reason that they're in here? Does it not? I think a lot of times, like everyone's going to be asymmetrical. That's how humans are built. But if it starts to make sense in terms of why they're coming in, let's just say, for sake of an example, low back pain, they're shifted more to the right, they've got left-sided low back pain, they've got hip mobility deficits on the left.
Mhm.
That's where you can kinda start to draw that line and make things make sense, but I think it can be challenging, especially in the beginning, and I'm sure you've experienced this when there's so many things to look at. I mean, you could literally look from head to toe. What does cervical rotation look like? What does shoulder mobility look like? Thoracic, lumbar, hip, ankle, toe. So, I guess in cases that are let's say you're the patient that walks through the door and you have the left-sided low back pain after deadlifting. For somebody that doesn't know where to start, but they wanna take a more well-rounded approach and take into account posture and asymmetries, where would you have them look for maybe the lowest hanging fruit and they only have an hour's worth of time?
That's a good question. So that's why I developed the model that I have is because I was tired of thinking about all these different things. I wanted like a strict step-by-step process to take. So essentially like to boil it down, the first things that we got to do is just understand what this person's like global gravitational management strategy is. Like how do they stack under gravity? Because that's important. That has a lot to do with your breathing. That has a lot to do with your pelvic floor to diaphragm relationship and just being able to generally achieve a stacked position, not even like live in neutrality, but just be able to access it is very important. So first, what I like to do is like just get someone to understand what it feels like to achieve a stacked head over rib cage, over pelvis with proper weight distribution through the appropriate areas in the foot. And that is a very important thing. Like that's got to be like achievable for people. Because if it's not, then you're never gonna be able to like move into neutrality and then move out of neutrality. I think that's very important. So on top of that, we also have to appreciate the side to side imbalances. So we typically do that after they can learn how to properly stack and achieve those positions. And so from there, we have to just zoom out and be like, okay, out of these sides, your left and right, which side does your body want to start improving the capacity to shift into better? And your body will tell you because you can run certain tests and exercises and then objectively see an improvement from head to toe in your assessments based off of, I'm going to try this exercise that improves your capacity to shift into the left side. What happened? Oh, everything got worse. Okay, then that means you don't want to do that. Let's do it on your right side. Oh, everything got better. That means your body wants to start learning how to better shift into its right side and develop either a relationship with the floor, better rotation to that side, a combination of both usually. And then you have a really good starting point. And so I think what's really helpful is just A, learning how to generally stack, and B, learning which side of your body that you want to improve the capacity. I call it occupancy. Occupy that side as you load it with genuine mechanics. That's what is really low hanging fruit, because once you understand what goes into that, it's really just a matter of like putting yourself in a position to access that. And there are common themes, which I don't know how technical we want to get. There are common themes as to like what that looks like.
Let's get technical. Let's do it.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, sure. So like typically if you lack the ability to shift into a given side, you can't open up your rib cage on that side. You can't turn your spine to that side. You can't open up the backside of your hips on that side. And you can't access a supinated foot shape on that side. So by doing exercises that promote those specific qualities, you should see an improvement in your measurements that reflect your capacity to turn into that given limited side. And so that could be like a simple side lying exercise where you're shifting your hip back and just breathing in a nice, relaxed way. That could be a simple exercise where you're standing with a staggered stance with your back up against the wall on the side that you struggle to shift into, reaching let's say you struggle to shift into your left. You can do like a standing activity, staggered, left foot back, right arm reach, pulling yourself back up. Like there's so many different ways you could do that. And that's the simple version of it. It can get more complicated for sure, but then you also have to appreciate like what the other right side is doing in this context. Because if you struggle to shift into your left, you probably suck at shifting out of your right. So you want to do something that promotes those mechanics. And so that would be like getting better external rotation and abduction at the hip. That involve bringing your ribs forward on that side because you're turned to that side. And those little things, which are, I guess, they're not all that little, but when you add them up, that results in people usually feeling better pretty quick. But the exercise itself doesn't have to be that complicated to achieve all of these things. I know it sounds like a lot. The listener is probably like, wow, that sounds like an overwhelming amount of information. But really, like you could lay someone, like let's say you sucked at getting into your left side. You could lay on your left side with your head supported on a pillow, and you could bend your hips and knees to about 60 degrees of hip flexion. Shift your right knee ahead of your left and just breathe in that position. You would be getting almost every single one of those qualities I just described.
Yeah. Here's the thing that I have found is difficult sometimes with clinical application is people come to physical therapy and obviously when they're coming to you, they know what to expect, right? They're like,
Mhm.
I'm going to be doing these restorative exercises that are going to get me more balanced. And then from there, we will load. But I have people in clinic that I have tried these exercises with, and they're like, it's kinda hard to sell sometimes, and I'm
It's a
curious if you've
turnoff.
ever
Yeah.
have you run
Mhm.
into that? Because they're like, "Where is my kettlebell? Why
Absolutely.
am I not doing a clamshell?" Like, "This is
Absolutely.
PT." So, what do you say to those people? How do you explain it? What's the patient education?
Oh, I think nothing is going to be perfect for everyone. But what I like to say is I want to work with reasonable people. And I think something that is reasonable is if you assess someone and you're able to explain what is going on within their posture and movement limitations based off of that assessment should be able to be redone after an intervention and see a positive change in multiple different areas. Like even if you have a low back issue, if I give you a positive change that's meaningful and will have a high likelihood of making you feel better, I should see your neck rotation get better. I should see your shoulder rotation get better. I should see
Right.
your hip rotation get better. So those things should all be in place. If I only make a change at the hip, I don't know if I actually did anything super meaningful, to be honest with you. I should see everything, at least to some extent, budge. And so if I do that and I retest you, I don't think a reasonable person could sit there and say, oh, yeah, this is crap. Like, I don't want to do this. I think you have to show them the value by helping them really tangibly feel the difference in their assessments, maybe within posture photos, because people relate to those. As long as you don't make
Mhm.
them neurotic about improving their posture, I think that could be helpful. And even just how they feel when they walk, because a lot of these exercises that I do tangibly make an immediate impact on how they move and feel. And so if you get that change and you still aren't bought in, I wouldn't want to work with that person, to be honest with you.
Right.
And if they're so like locked into like traditional PT, then to me, that's also a bit of a red flag from like a client perspective, you know?
Yeah.
But
No.
if they do want to do a traditional exercise or they're so incessant on doing, let's say, a clamshell because they're just so sure it helps them. Okay, let's do this. Go do your clamshell, come back, let me retest you and see what happens. 90% of the time, it makes them worse from head to toe.
Yeah. Yeah. I say it on the podcast a lot, test, treat, retest. That's the only way that you're going to know that you're making a difference. Otherwise,
Right.
you're just throwing things at the wall and hoping that they stick. And I think we need to talk about the setup of your exercises and the way that you coach them, I think is really it's a very important part. And I'm sure it's something that you cover more in depth with your mentorship program and your biomechanics course. I'd love to touch a little bit on just the role of the diaphragm and diaphragmatic breathing or just controlled breathing, I guess, and then how we activate the parasympathetic system and how that plays into the effectiveness of the exercise.
For sure. So my exercises are frustratingly low effort for people because everything everyone's done before seeing me is more harder, faster, stronger. It's I am going to increase my effort because that will increase my results. And that is so backwards to me because almost everyone that's dealing with some sort of chronic issue needs help initially, not forever, but initially creating less tension. They need help creating less tension, not more. So we need to
Mhm.
take tension out of their body. It's just insane when you truly appreciate this and then you have someone do just like a simple side lying drill where they're just like shifting their hips back and forth, how much tension people carry in their face and their neck. They're like, "Ugh," they're just like trying to make it like a strength training exercise. And it's like, what are you doing? It's wild to me. But also
Yeah.
I understand because that's what the industry promotes is like bigger stretch equals
We need to
better.
be trying really hard.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like you are going to do this with a literal 15% of your maximal effort. And if you don't do that, you're probably not going to get the result. And like I said, that might not be for everyone. Some people might just not vibe with that. But I hope, again, I'm working with a reasonable person that would see the actual tangible benefit afterwards. And like, oh, I see what you're saying. And
Mhm.
if I'm really trying to sell them, I'll say, okay, now go do that same exact thing you just did that you know works. Do it with 60% effort. And then I'll retest them and they're worse. And it's like, if you don't see it at that point, I don't know what to tell you. But anyway, so the parasympathetic nervous system, just getting that general vagus nerve input is very important because that allows you to take tension out of the system. People are stuck with a diaphragm typically in a descended state, which is an inhaled state. So if your body is constantly stuck in a position where your diaphragm is in this hyperinflated position, then that's a sympathetic fight or flight response. Try to, if you're listening to this, try to just inhale, flare your rib cage, and puff out your chest. Like that, you're immediately more alert. You're
I'm stressed.
immediately, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
like you're wide. And so that's kind of what people are stuck in all the time. It doesn't help that like screens and all this light that we're dealing with and just like how society is wiring our brains to constantly be anxious and just seeking dopamine, like that also feeds into this sympathetic overdrive that a lot of people are dealing with. So by getting someone to back down, like exhale, that's what gets people to relax the tension. That's why on almost all of my videos, I talk about that extended but soft exhale. And it's frustratingly low effort too. Just letting the air fall out of your mouth for a period of like 5-ish seconds really gets people to relax. And then you can start to put the right inputs back into their body as opposed to just like, all right, feel your foot connect to the wall in this way or to the ground in this way and then just like breathe through it. When people do that, they're just like they like
Yes.
treat it like a
Yes.
strength exercise again. And so we need to remind them that the intention is very low effort. And it's pretty like when you do that right, the results can be like pretty profound.
It's interesting because it's really pain science combined with corrective exercise, right?
Mhm.
Like, I mean, I think especially in the clinic with my chronic neck pain patients,
Uh-huh.
If I can just get them supine or side lying on the table and work on breathing, a lot of their pain will go away. And I'm not saying that
Absolutely.
it's in their head, but it really does have a much more profound effect than I think we give it credit for. Just parasympathetic drive, slowing down, not feeling stress in every single part of your body. Yeah, it's underrated, I think.
I think neck pain people are really, really interesting because there's a lot of different presentations of it. But one common theme is like people carry their stress, like that idea in their neck. And so like even when they eat something that inflames their body, like have you ever seen this? It like flares up their neck. And that like to
Mm,
me it seems to be more common than other areas. And like I've seen it with like low back and shoulders too, but like I see when people carry all this tension in their neck or they're just like dealing with a neck issue, typically like any inflammation in their body tends to really trigger that. So they tend to be very sensitive about their neck. And that's why I think like the breathing stuff is very helpful because it helps unattach or it helps unlink their stress from their neck. And then when you can get them to do something a little bit more complicated to dissociate their neck, helping them do literally everything. One test that I do is called a grounding test. I'll have them lay on their side, feet up against the wall, and I'll have them push their bottom foot into the wall. And on a scale of 1 to 10, I ask them, okay, at what point, starting at a zero, going to a one, to taking like multiple breaths at each step, what point do you feel like the first little muscle fiber activity of your neck? And typically for most people, it's at a two. And at a 2 out of 10, 20% effort, people's necks are already trying to help them, which is to me like that's pretty crazy. A neck pain person might be, I can't even get a one, but then I'll like take a dynamometer and I'll objectively measure how much force they're putting into the wall. And then a method of progression is can you put more force into the wall without you using your neck or your low back? Can you do it using your obliques? And that's again another sign that they're doing it better. If they can go from like on that dynamometer scale from like 6 pounds of pressure to 20 pounds of pressure, like that's pretty good. And I find that
mm.
that's a really nice way to get neck pain people to slowly learn how to stop relying on it.
Yeah, it's making me think of this study, and I'll botch the credentials, but I remember learning about it in PT school, and they basically were measuring the resting EMG muscle activity of people who had self-reported low levels of stress or none,
Mhm.
and then self-reported very high levels of stress. And the people that had at rest self-reported high levels of stress, much more beneath the skin. So like that EMG muscle activity was much higher, like significantly. And again, I don't know the numbers, but I like to educate people on that because it's just like one of those things you don't realize you're doing until you're in so much pain. And so, yeah, down training it in that way I think is cool. I like the idea of the dynamometer too because that
Mhm.
objective feedback is good for people and then they can carry it over like to go from sideline to then okay, now we're going to stand and we're going to walk and see
Absolutely.
can we carry it over? Can we make this applicable to everyday life? That's
Yeah.
cool.
And we're talking like a lot of low level stuff right now, but it's always important. I want to make sure like this is clear that we have to eventually like progressively overload. We have to be able to get people upright. Otherwise, we're just kind of going to be pedaling in the little kids pool for too long. So I think like one very fine line to walk with this stuff is like when do you progress people? When do you actually move them on? The progression model I have has that built in, but it's important that we don't disregard the ability for the human to load because I think almost everyone can do some form of weight training. Almost everyone, even if you have chronic pain, you just have to be able to tailor it to them to build that resiliency, to help them understand that, like, hey, we did some drills earlier that are taking tension out. Now, let's almost think about putting it back in, but in the right areas with the right strategies.
I'm glad you brought that up because I want to know how you structure your sessions. And I'll use a case study from someone that I saw earlier today. He is definitely favors his right side. He is like into his right hip, externally rotated on the left, rotated like thoracic spine to the right. He's got right shoulder pain, left low back pain, left hip pain. And it's like by the end of a session, we can always get him feeling better, but he's one that's really hard to convince to do anything outside of his session.
Mm,
And so it's almost like every time I see him, we're back at square one. And for somebody like that, would you say that for the foreseeable future, we're always going to have to start a session with some of these basic laying the framework, the groundwork exercises to get you feeling
mm.
better and out of that side and then load because yeah, I mean it's been going on for a while and it's I kind of feel like we're at a dead end.
No, I know. Yeah. For that type of person, that is hard to work with for sure. Because like I
Mhm.
don't logically I don't understand that like how can you be in pain but not want to do anything consistently for it? But that's a different story. Anyway, so with that, a lot of what these low level drills are doing is it's trying to almost practice a skill, which is creating associations between different muscles and joint positions working together. Like, for example, if you're stuck shifted right, then one muscle group that's helpful to push out of your right side is your glute max. And so one of the drills that I commonly use is being able to push into the wall with the arch of your foot and help turn your pelvis from right to left using your glute to help facilitate that turn. But creating that association is literally a skill. It's like definitely you need to build up some adaptation, but like part of that adaptation is the skill learning process. And so I don't think you have to be stuck with that person forever. If they've gotten to the point where like they can associate the arch of their foot working with their glute, then you can like
Mhm.
progress them to something higher level. And then eventually they should be able to do that in a split squat or like a
Yeah.
staggered stance, whatever. And so that's kind of like where I would take that person if I knew they weren't going to do anything. I'd just ramp it up slowly.
And we do, I guess that's the point I was trying to make is, like, by the end of the hour, like, we're doing loaded things. We're doing split
Hmm.
squats, we're doing whatever, like, it's a workout, but I'm just curious for some people, like, let's just say they've been lateralized one way for 40 years,
Hmm.
and they've never done anything about it. Would you say that every gym session, they should start with some of these foundational exercises? Or let's say they don't wanna do it at the gym, would you recommend, like, "We're gonna be doing these at home, 4 days a week to maintain some of these changes?"
If they've been stuck in it for a very long time, I think for the foreseeable future, yes, it would be helpful for them just to,
Yeah.
again, like learn what it feels like to create the right associations without like compensations, your low back, your neck. Like if you're trying to get like the glute working without your TFL trying to do everything for you. So I think that that's very helpful initially as a warm up. Just from my own experience, I find that that helps me just really lock in and create the right, like, hey, left foot equals this muscle, my left hamstring working in this particular way, or my left adductor working in this particular way, or left glute down the line. And so that's what I like. But if someone wasn't into that, I would say you could do it for a brief period of time for a couple of weeks until you understand kind of like, hey, when I'm doing my single leg activities, I might want to feel like a little bit more pressure in my right foot in this particular way. Not like totally change the exercise, but now that I understand kind of like what things should be working with which specific muscle groups and areas, you can kind of like, hey, I know that my right low back kind of flares up if I don't keep my right foot contacts on the pad in this particular thing during a leg press. And so if someone is like smart enough and they can like critically think about it a little bit, I think that they can kind of figure it out and they can kind of discern as to like how long they need to do these until they build up that skill and that awareness.
So, for you personally, with your low back pain issue, are you still doing some of these foundational things even now, years later?
If so, no, I don't do anything consistently, but I
Cool.
do, if I have an issue, I know which drills I need to go to, but I have
Yeah.
structured my training in a way that allows me to still utilize some of the motions that I've spent years restoring. And so I just like, it's like, again, like I just remind myself, like I'll do a split squat in a specific way. I'll do like a kickstand hinge in a specific way that allows me to get into those shapes that I was previously unable to. And I find that that carries over really well to the rest of my life outside of the workout too.
Nice. I'm glad you brought up your personal workout too, because yeah, I want to talk about it. What's your training look like? What are you doing on a weekly basis?
I'm at the gym 5 days a week. I don't work out at my own gym because I don't like to mix play with work. So I go to a
Same.
different gym. And typically on Mondays, it's a mix between just like a couple of upper body exercises and cardio. And then on Tuesday, today, I suppose, after this call, I'm going to go do some leg press and a leg focus day, but I'm going to intermix some back into that as well. Generally, like the way I structure my workouts is like I start off with like the heavy compound, but then, and this is typically what I teach in the course as well, is you start off with the heavy hitter. Allow that to do its thing. Don't worry about it. Have fun with it. Push yourself. Yes, there's ways that you can do it and be smart about it. Like when I leg press, I know that I need to feel my PSIS contacts on that back pad. And as soon as I lose those, and I will lose them at a certain level of hip flexion, then I'm going to start to orient and move through my spine more than I am through like
Yeah.
my femurs moving into internal rotation. So at that point, I stop the depth, and that's around like 100 degrees of hip flexion for me. So I'm just aware of that. But then outside of that, I'm just like push. And I know what that
Yeah.
100 degrees feels like. And most people will as well once they find out what works best for their body. So then after that, I will do a secondary exercise. Today it's going to be a split squat. So I'm going to do some sort of like very slightly offset split squat. And I'm not going to like try and think too much about this either. I'm going to go like, okay, I'm going to hold the weight in both hands, but when my left leg is forward, my right arm weight is a little bit heavier to facilitate a better turn into my left side.
Got
And
it.
that just little minor shift allows me to create a little bit more of a counterbalance so I can find my left heel a little bit better. Otherwise, I'm just thinking about jamming. I'm just going after that split squat otherwise. And then once I get into like my third tertiary block, this is more like restorative, but also like output, more like your isolation bro work. But I'm doing it in a way that's conducive to the goals I have for mobility and also hypertrophy at the same time. So typically what I'll do is like a specific side plank variation in a way that's conducive for me, like facilitating my left turn. I'll do like tricep extensions done in a certain way that allows me to like open up my chest on my right side and draw air into that. I'll do like a preacher curl in a specific way with the emphasis on the breath. So that way I can feel the expansion of my back rib cage. And I can do all of that without really sacrificing too much of the hypertrophy element of things. Obviously, like if you're going to failure, you're going to break down, and that's just got to be like something you program in. But I found that structuring my workouts in that way, where it's like big output, second output, where you're still like focused on, driving some gains, but also like you're mindful of the things that your body needs to feel good. And then like third block, output still, but less so. And it's more focused on like getting a pump or whatever, but you're now doing things that like really help your body feel good leaving the gym.
So you're like Connor Harrising Connor Harris, basically.
So, yeah.
Okay, so that's Tuesday. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, pretty much same, like just kind of splitting it up.
Wednesday, what is tomorrow? Tomorrow's going to be more chest and it's going to be a little, well, actually, I'm flying out to teach a seminar on Thursday. So it's going to be very condensed. I'm going to do like a full body day tomorrow, but typically Wednesdays are, did I say back? I said back today. So no, tomorrow is going to be a little bit more chest and it's going to be a little more arms. Thursday is another leg focused day. And then Friday is typically like I'm at the end of my week. So I'm just trying to do a bunch of bro lifts and have a good time with it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I found that I can't get myself to stay consistent on a Friday if I don't do that. I'll be so checked out mentally that I'll just be like, I gotta get home.
Yeah, I get that. I bet for you, I mean, it sounds like you take a lot of the things you know and you apply them in the gym. It also
Mhm.
gives you good ideas for content. At least that's how I feel when I'm at the
It
gym. I'm
does.
exercising and I'm like, this will be a great video. Let's pause this episode for a hot second so I can talk to you guys about saving money. Don't you like to save money? I know I do. If you use my code RonniePT2MO, that's all caps RONIPT, the number 2, capital M, capital O, you can save 2 months worth of your Jane subscription. Jane is my clinical management software that I've been using for the past 2 years to run all of the things inside of my clinic. We're talking documentation, we're talking scheduling, we're talking billing, we're talking patient communications, we're talking running reports, AI scribe. Everything under the sun that I need in the clinic on my day-to-day basis is taken care of with Jane. My practice honestly would not be where it is today if it weren't for me implementing Jane a couple of years ago, and I highly recommend it if you can't already tell. So, check out the link in the show notes to learn more about Jane, and don't forget to use my code. Back to the show.
Absolutely. Yes. And I've just found that for good content, typically I'll find something that works for me. I'll try it on some of my clients. And then I always try to like solve a problem. You know what I mean? Like if I
Mhm.
solve the problem for myself, that's good. But everyone really is watching content for themselves. So the perspective I try to take is like, how can I make this relatable for the average person to fix a problem they can relate to? And I
Yep.
found that that's really helpful.
Yeah, I like it. Okay. I want to go back a little bit to the anatomy specific things, only because I think when we're talking about what we cover in PT school, and I know a lot of my listeners are either kind of new PTs or in PT school, there's things that we just skip over.
Mhm.
And for whatever reason, we do. I mean, we have full anatomy labs where we're, doing the dissection from head to toe and it lasts the whole semester. But there are things that we really focus on, and then there are things we kind of brush over. One of them being the thoracic spine and the rib cage. I think
Yeah.
rib cage mobility is not something that is talked about a lot in the ortho world, maybe more so in the past 5 years, but prior to that, not so much. It's just like, "Hey, these are the ribs, they protect the organs, and then
Yeah.
now we're moving on." What do you think clinicians are missing about rib cage mobility and the role that it plays in exercise?
Oh man, I mean, I just think it's the foundation of so much of what
I
we
agree.
do. Like
Yeah.
if your rib cage isn't fluid and able to change shape, then like you're kind of screwed. Like you can't rotate through your thoracic spine if your ribs are glued and stuck and just compressed. Like you
Mhm.
literally won't be able to do that thing. So by having a more fluid rib cage, you actually give your scapula the capacity to move through all the different planes of motion that it can, upward, downward rotation, abduction, adduction, internal, external rotation. Like if your rib cage is glued, I'm just using that word for the purposes of the visual idea it gives people. If it's stuck, then you're not actually going to be able to get your shoulder to move very well on your rib cage. And then your humerus is going to be stuck and you're not going to have that coupled motion between your scapula and your humerus that you're looking for. And on top of that, like if your rib cage can't turn in a certain direction, your hips can't turn in the opposite direction. And so then you just have issues at your pelvis. So I find like restoring that is one of the biggest low hanging fruits that people can do to feel better and move better, literally from head to toe. It's just like so, so important. And yeah, it's incredible how little people know about it.
It is, and I guess I don't wanna do a disservice and talk down on PT school because I think we covered the anatomical structure
Mhm.
well. We're like, "This is the
Sure.
bucket handle movement that happens. This is what happens when it expands and when it contracts," but I just don't think that we think about it applied, and then I think a lot of times people miss the mark when someone has a shoulder pain or has neck pain. We just don't consider how is the rib cage moving. We're looking like everywhere else around it, kind of beating around the bush and yeah, missing one of the main points there. So, do you have any go-to exercises for that?
I think literally just putting yourself on your side and learning what it feels like to breathe is one of the first. You got to learn how to do that first. So you can do that in a supine position. You can do it side lying, but just learning what it feels like to just kind of exhale, feel your TVA. Well, it's kind of hard to sense that, but like your internal obliques, anchor down your rib cage a little bit at the end of that exhale, and then inhale, letting the air fall into you to feel what genuine back posterior expansion of your rib cage feels like, and then anterior front rib cage expansion as well. Feeling what that is necessary first and foremost, because if you can't feel it happening, it's probably not happening in the majority of cases. And then from there, like you can just use gravity to your advantage, and you can use like different arm reaching positions to your advantage. Like if you have a very compressed back rib cage, reaching low allows you to open that space up because you do get that protraction of the scapula. Low meaning less than 60 degrees relative to your trunk. That doesn't involve a lot of concentric orientation of musculature on the backside of your rib cage. So by reaching low, you facilitate the capacity to open up your back rib cage easily. But if you start getting in like the 90 plus degrees of shoulder flexion range, when you start to like get meaningful upward rotation, now you have a lot more concentric orientation stuff that's tight on the backside of the rib cage, which inherently is going to restrict how much you open up the backside of your rib cage. But by going further overhead, essentially you can think about it like this. The higher I reach overhead, the more my front ribs open.
Mhm.
So that is facilitating the external rotation of the ribs. And it also is going to allow you to naturally shut off your backside rib cage to facilitate more front side rib cage expansion. And as a very general rule, like this is oversimplifying things a bit. Like if you have a limitation in shoulder internal rotation, then you probably have problems with front side rib cage expansion. If you have problems with shoulder external rotation, then you probably have back rib cage expansion problems.
So overall, just make sure that thing is mobile and we'll be good to go.
And you can target specific areas by doing those strategies, which is really nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of breathing, I think one misconception a lot of times people think like diaphragmatic breathing, I'm belly breathing. So I'm going to breathe
No.
into my stomach and it's just kind of going anterior. And we're not thinking about like full thoracic cavity expansion. How do you coach that to people? And also, why do you think it is that we're pushing? I don't think people are pushing belly breathing as much anymore, but I remember
I don't
as a
know how we
student,
got there. It's
I don't
crazy.
either. It's
I
like
don't either. It's
put your hand on
genuinely
your
insane.
stomach and raise your hand and push into your hand. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I do. I don't know how we got there. We our lungs are in our rib cage. I don't know how we got to the belly, but I think it's through like a lot of yoga influences. And I understand the idea of it. The reason why a diaphragmatic breath like that, quote unquote, is a diaphragmatic breath is because if you breathe into your belly, your diaphragm literally descending pushes the contents of your guts out. So that is technically a diaphragmatic breath. However, if you want diaphragmatic breath in the essence of getting your adequate expansion of the rib cage without compensatory mechanisms to help you do that, then you want your rib cage and belly to expand simultaneously together. You don't want to shut off your belly, but that's why earlier on in the pod, we were talking about getting the ribs to come down and like anchored down by the internal obliques and TVA upon a nice gentle exhale. I used to think I needed to like really crank on an exhale, like a like really go after it, but you don't really need to do that. You just got to get a little bit of engagement, soft, gentle, hold it down, and then inhale, letting the air fall into your rib cage. And then that will give you what you're looking for. Because what I've realized is that if you are super compressed and tight in your rib cage, then if you try to force air in, you're just going to use your neck. You're just going to use anything you can to elevate yourself. You use your traps. But if
Mhm.
you are genuinely that compressed, then you do need to start small. You do need to start with like a very minor, gentle inhale. And that can be frustrating for people, but like, it's like, hey, if you're starting at zero, you have to take baby steps. Otherwise, you're just going to feed whatever compensation you were doing before to take a breath in.
So much of this discussion is really about like neuromuscular reeducation. And I know my
Mhm.
PTs know what I'm talking about, but that is what it is at its core. And then everything else is applied and then loaded appropriately following a good baseline. So
Yeah, that
I
sums it
like
up.
it. I like it. It's a good approach. Okay. Kind of rapid fire here. What do people get wrong about forward head posture?
I think they take a muscular centric perspective as opposed to like there's an increasingly large body of research to suggest that it's like very much related to your airway and your breathing. And so
Mhm.
by addressing your breathing, like yes, you want your neck flexors to do a better job 100%. Like there's all these things that are important, but they're very symptom driven. So I think by improving one's capacity to dissociate the neck from lifting the rib cage, which is what it's trying to do, you can really see some nice improvements with that. And I think that's the actual long term fix. But if you just try and work on your neck flexors and then you go and start breathing again, you didn't change anything. You just repositioned your neck over and over again. So I think
Mm.
that's by far the biggest misconception with it.
What is the biggest misconception with shoulder impingement?
I think it goes entirely back to the ribcage discussion. I think that
Yeah.
again,
I
it's
knew you were gonna say
rotate
that.
like rotator cuff. Well, your rotator cuff can only control the movement available at your shoulder. So if your glenohumeral joint only has so much movement available to it, then that means your rotator cuff can only control that genuine movement that's there. Otherwise, you're just going to be like turning your spine and cranking your ribs in a certain position to fake that motion at the shoulder joint. And so, if you just do rotator cuff exercises, I think people would be surprised. I'm actually making a post on this very soon. How little range of motion they actually have. If you were to genuinely measure someone's like external rotation down by their side, most people are in like the 30-degree range. And so
Yeah.
people do their external rotation drills going out to 90 degrees. How are you getting that other 60 degrees? You are turning your spine.
Yeah,
Whether
they're
you
doing
recognize it or not, you are turning your spine and you are not training your rotator cuff through more than 30 degrees of genuine range of motion. And so, wouldn't it be helpful then to maybe open up some space for that and then train your rotator cuff?
I like it. Okay. What are people missing with low back pain treatment?
Mm,
Like, I
I
mean,
think
I know this could go forever, but
this could go so many different directions. I think there's a really good argument to be made that a lot of low back pain is like it's so biopsychosocial just like with anything else, but I don't want to use a cop out answer. I think that people don't realize how resilient their body actually is. And I think there is a big component to like building resiliency through just like graded exposure. I think that's huge. But that graded exposure, in my opinion, should take place under an environment of a body that can express good, genuine movement. Because, like, there's two types of movement. Like, we can have relative motion, where we have segments of our body rotating relative to each other. So like if I were to twist my arm in, this is turning, this is turning, this my forearm. If you, I guess no one's really watching this. So if
no,
you
people might be
turn your,
watching.
some people are watching, for the three people that are watching this, but people are listening. If you just twist your hand down and you pronate, your forearm rotates more than your humerus. So that is relatively everything is internally rotating, but your forearm is internally rotating faster than your humerus. And so that's relative motion. Orientation is everything dumping in together at once. You're not getting that segmental rotation as much. So the conditions at which I like to help people build resiliency through are through expressing a healthy amount of relative motion versus just orientation. So much of low back rehab is so spine driven. It's like cat cows, all that stuff. Like you're just moving your spine all over the place. Like if you want
Mhm.
to genuinely restore that segmental rotation from your hip joint all the way down to your foot, then we have to take a different approach rather than just like orienting your spine all over the place and hoping for the best.
Yeah, I love it. I agree. I'm actually having Doctor do you know Stuart McGill? You know the McGill Big 3?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Yes, having him on in a couple of weeks, and we're gonna,
Oh,
like,
that'll be
delve deep into the low back because
cool.
it's so common, but I like what you're saying about people are more resilient than they think. I don't wanna put people in buckets, but I see, like, commonly 2 types of low back pain patient in the clinic. It's, like, someone that is training a lot and not training well, and then it's
Yeah,
someone that is just severely deconditioned and not trained.
I agree. And they're
And
afraid.
yeah, and they're afraid, and I like both. I think both are fun to treat for different reasons. Like, one needs more variety of movement in their training because they're just, like, moving through the sagittal plane too much with too much load, and then one just needs to get up off their ass, and if we move a little bit more,
Do something.
they're gonna
Yeah.
feel better, and it's fun to see the surprise that they can see when they thought that, their disc was gonna slip if they bent over when really it's like, "No, we can get strong through these positions and make a real change."
That's why they say walking is one of the, if not the most correlated positively thing to low back pain relief that we know of. It's like one of
Yeah,
them, I'm pretty sure.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
literally therapeutic exercise is what it
Yep.
is.
There you go.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we talked a little bit about your mentorship program. What
Mhm.
else is next for you? This could be business, this could be personal, like, what do you got going on? You going on any trips?
I am going on trips. I travel a lot. Every year I take 1 month off and I go travel places and I like go with my girlfriend and we have an amazing time. Last year it was Southeast Asia. This year it's going to be France, Norway, and Switzerland, which is going to be sweet. So that's coming up in my life and is very exciting. But I think like, yeah, the change from the course to the mentorship is going to be such a beast that I want to like the good news is I already have all the content for it, but just to make that transition is like chewing up a lot of my mental bandwidth. But I'm super excited for it because it's going to be, I hope, the best mentorship program in this realm of the fitness industry that exists. And so, in order to make it that, I have to put a lot of time and effort into it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge undertaking, but I
Mm.
think people are gonna benefit from it so much. I know that they will, just because just from your content alone and the things that I've been able to learn, like YouTube videos, Instagram, the things that I've watched of yours, I mean, you have helped shape the way that I go about treating my clients. So picture
Wow,
that
thank you.
with
Yeah,
with 12 months worth of Conor Harris. That's amazing.
I really appreciate you saying that. That's really cool to hear.
Yeah, I mean it. And also, Switzerland is super fun.
It's the best. Yeah, I could not be more excited.
Have you been?
Yeah, I've been before. Yeah. We're going to like the Lauterbrunnen Valley. We're going to go to literally everywhere. Like we're going like anywhere you can think of in Switzerland. We're taking a car through it for like a week and a half. So like the Lauterbrunnen Valley to me is like the pinnacle of that country.
It's my husband and I'd say we're like, out of all the places we've been, like that's one of the countries where we would move to. Like I would
Absolutely.
move there. The air feels
Yeah.
clean, the water is clear, everything is just like crisp.
It's just really hard to become a citizen, isn't it?
I think so.
I think they make
Yeah.
it intentionally very challenging
I mean,
for
that's
good
fair.
reason.
Yeah, no, that 100% that makes sense. Okay. Well, I appreciate you so much for coming on and educating the masses. Before we sign off, I always ask people the same question. And I guess you're not a physical therapist, so I can't ask you if you could go back to your PT school self. But if you could go back to, we'll say 2020 Connor Harris, when you were getting everything up and running and started,
Mhm.
what would you say to yourself 6 years ago?
Man, I'd be really, I mean, this is going to sound so, let me think about something productive to say.
No, no. I mean, you can do
I would
whatever
say
comes off
I would
top of
first
mind.
I'm just proud of the progress that I've made and how far I've come. So like honestly, I wouldn't really change a whole lot because if I tinkered with something, I'd be afraid I wouldn't end up where I am today. I would say to I would say to find never stop working with a mentor. I would say that. Like don't get complacent and never like no matter how much you think you know stuff, you don't. Like find someone that is a mentor and keep them around because if you don't do that, then it's easy to just get caught up in your own ego, get lost in the sauce a little bit. And I definitely went through a period of that where I think I had a lot of the answers that I absolutely still don't. So I would say that would be a big, but otherwise, like really what came down to my success was just being passionate about something and then working on that thing every day because it didn't really feel like work. It was just something like there's nothing better to me. And I'm sure you can relate to this than like having someone say to you, like, you've changed my life. Like I
Mm,
can do what I can do now without pain because of you. And I get like a comment like that on my YouTube videos like every day. It's like insane.
mm.
If this isn't it, I don't know what is.
I love that. And also a subtle plug for your mentorship program if you
There we
don't have a
go.
mentor,
Yep.
Conor
You don't
Harris
get results like
mentorship
that.
program. Yeah, no, it is such a rewarding career. Helping people is rewarding in itself, and then when you can do it at large scale like you do, it's just that much more rewarding. So, we appreciate
Yeah,
what you do.
peak dopamine.
Yeah. And, you didn't have to answer in a productive way. When, someone did, like, a little Uno reverse and asked me the same question, and I was
Huh.
like, "No, I think I would go back and do everything the same."
Wow.
And yes,
Good answer.
and yeah, and I agree to the mentorship thing as well. So,
That's cool.
any closing words before we sign off?
No, I thought this was fun. You asked great questions. And like we were talking about this before the podcast too, is like so many podcasts are just like people just sit around and say agreeable stuff and like there's no real value. But I think like we actually gave some real tangible, practical help for people and some good information. So that's thanks to your good questions.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Maybe we'll do it again sometime.
That'd be awesome.